I created a traveling detail business, which is what I was doing. I was going to $1 million homes cleaning really expensive cars every day. So the passion was there behind these cars because it just I'm touching them and working on them and cleaning them every day. I think the realization of I had to keep a full time job to keep the other aspects of things coming in and what we needed. We were a young couple. We got together very young.
Imagine stepping into a garage not just to fix cars, but to fix careers and boost the entire business. That's exactly what Robert Migliaccio has done throughout his journey in the automotive world. From handling parts to steering entire service departments towards unprecedented growth, because he's talked about it regularly on Service Drive Live. Customer satisfaction, Miggs has mastered the art and science of service in ways most only dream of. Every role, every challenge, every vehicle rolled out a little bit better than it came in. Today, we're diving into his story. Service director that's transformed parts counters and service bays in Pennsylvania and Virginia into gold mines of efficiency and excellence. This is Robert's tale on the Wrench Turners podcast. Let's get into it. Robert, it's a pleasure to have you here this evening.
Yeah, man. After that intro, I don't know how I'm going to follow up any of that though. Jeez.
Well, it's true, brother, because I've been listening. Let's see, we're 2025 now, so we're 3 solid years of me showing up nearly every week to Service Drive Live, and you showing up nearly every week to Service Drive Live. And I get to hear your stories about the stuff that you do in the store. I get to see, you are really big about posting about your staff in all the stores that you manage, because you kind of float between the stores and the group that you're in, helping out where needed and changing things and adapting things and bringing motivation and inspiration to the team as you go through them. And it shows. It genuinely shows. It shows from the outside and obviously in the tidbits that you share based on what you do. And when we get into the granular stuff on Service Drive Live, it gets really nitty gritty. It's really only those die-hard folks, those 5%ers that really dig in and tuck in and listen to the stuff that you have to say, because it is really tactical when you share those moments. So I really appreciate those. So what I want to do, as always, I want to keep this as normal for everybody that listens and watches as possible. What got you into the trade in the first place?
So it was a interesting aspect of it. So my brothers growing up like to modify cars with stereo systems and audio. It was kind of the thing when we were growing up. It wasn't really tuning cars for me so much, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. So I started kind of tinkering with them, putting audio systems in cars, head units, speakers, running wires, just kind of doing the little nitty gritty things to the cars, and really started enjoying it. Ultimately, what really kind of got me into the automotive industry, I started cleaning cars and found a passion for that. I found myself I dropped out of high school my sophomore year, kind of looked at my parents and said, hey, look, I'm not going to have a college career right now. I feel it best. I just need to get working. So they let me go ahead, and I finished out school at our local community college and graduated high school my sophomore year. At that point in time, I kind of dropped out of my physical school. And from there on, I went to work and I started detailing. I really loved it, got really good at it, and kind of saw myself, thought I was going to be the entrepreneur. And I thought I was going to go ahead and move forward and kind of start my own automotive detailing business. And kind of the hopes were to have a modification shop, be a tuner shop, and, modify cars, put stereos in them, detail them, do all that stuff, and just kind of be the fun side of it for kind of what I was growing up in. Next thing I knew, I found myself, I'm working it was at a Ford store at the time, and the gentleman I was detailing with was a third party vendor kind of at the time. He wasn't actually working for the dealership, and so I was working with him. I was working at the Ford store, and then my currently my wife now, at the time girlfriend, her grandmother was working at a BMW store and they needed a detailer. So I was like, all right, let's do this. And I went over there and kind of everything changed for me once I got there. I found a real passion for the automotive world, really kind of realized I needed to turn my life around, get it into a career more so than a job. And we just dug in deep from there, and I worked my way up, everything from the back of the house at that point on. I worked as a porter in the service drive. I worked as a detailer, trying to learn as much as I could. I would work there, any extra days I could, and really was kind of there open to close, and really learned the business. I learned the sales side of things. The sales managers really wanted to push me on the sales side, and I was like, hey, I'm not a sales guy. I got to stay in the back here. And everybody above me always saw the drive and kind of pushed me to do more. So I found my way just going up from detailing to parts, everything in the parts department. I did parts driver, parts wholesale, shipper receiver, warranty, retail counter, technician counter, and really saw the genuineness of kind of what the technicians were going through. And I became that guy, the guy that they wanted to come to, and knew that if they came in asking for a certain part, they were going to get it right. If they needed, somebody to dig in and find something that wasn't available, everybody kind of knew it was me, and they really kind of searched out and sought me when they came up to the counter to make sure they were going to get what they needed. And I really enjoyed that. I thought at the time I was going to stay in the parts department. I really thought I was kind of where my uh, adventure for the automotive was going to end. I was like, hey, I'm really good at this. I kind of turn this into a great career, get up to be a parts manager and maybe parts director or something like that sometime in the future. We ended up moving at that time, so I lived in New Jersey throughout that period of time, and we moved to Pennsylvania, and I transferred to the BMW dealership there. And when I started working there, same concept. They really kind of saw the drive of where I was, and we got the Mini Cooper franchise about 3 years after I got there, and they needed somebody for the service lane and to run the service department for the Mini Cooper side. And they came and approached me and asked me if I'd be willing to do it. The hard part about fixed operations, I've always felt, is management areas are always fulfilled for long periods of time. They don't move around. It's not like the sales department or the front of the house, for that matter of fact. I kind of saw it as the next step in what I needed to do to kind of get myself in a position where I could help grow the department and actually be the focal point of it, not just be the person from behind the scenes growing it, but actually be the one trying to grow those underneath me to kind of get into it. So I went over there, and from that point on, it kind of really exploded. And I've been doing it since 2000. So this is February 2000 was when I kind of really got into it. So we're coming up on
You're
my
knocking on
25
25
year
years.
mark now. Yeah. And I'm
Nice.
not old enough for that. Every time I think about it, I'm like, no way, I'm not old enough to be in this 25 years. But
So
and lo and behold, this is where I'm at.
that's a pretty gnarly like timeline here. So let's dissect this a little bit. So that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, what happened to that in that first little bit? Because you had a desire to tune, modify, customize cars getting in, right? Many folks, some folks on the show have said the same thing, myself included. I kind of thought myself a tuner and so on and so forth at one point. To me, saying tuner out loud now feels a little bit cringy, but it is what it is. It is what it is. It is what it is. But let's go back to that, because you had that desire at that stage coming in, right? You're cleaning cars, you're pushing cars around, as it were, as a porter in a Ford store. I'm not sure if I got that right, where your first store was at a Ford store, but
the first actual store was a Ford store, and then from there
you're cleaning stuff, you're getting into the detail, thinking that that's going to be then, maybe tuning, not necessarily, but maybe getting into detailing, because that is a very viable option especially as a young man in automotive, going, okay, I can do this. I could do this as a business. What happened to that entrepreneurial, there's got to be an easier word to say, because it's really not an easy word to say. Where did that entrepreneurial spirit go initially?
I don't think it died.
Least?
I think what I got taught. So I loved it, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. But I'm in the Northeast, so the options were at the time I created a traveling detail business, which is what I was doing. So I was going to people's homes. The area we lived in, I wasn't very predominant, but the area was very predominant. So I was going to $1 million homes, cleaning really expensive cars every day. So the passion was there behind these cars, because I'm touching them and working on them and cleaning them every day. I think the realization of the needs of, I'd say for lack of a better, the needs of healthcare. I had to keep a full-time job to keep the other aspects of things coming in, and what we needed. We were a young couple. We got together very young. By that point in time, when I started doing that, we were just started kind of figuring out ourselves and what we were doing, just kind of getting around to get married in our futures and whatnot. And really what kind of sat in is talking to some of the, I guess, what would have been the fixed operations manager of the BMW store I was at the time when all that kind of came together, was learning that you can create a business within the business. So the entrepreneurship of it didn't really go away in the aspect of what I was doing externally, but I could create and run and ultimately treat what I was doing as its own business within the business. So, if I was working in the parts department, it was my parts department. It wasn't the BMW store parts department. I was under their umbrella, but I treated it and looked at the expenses, the structure, and the money as if it was my own personal venture that I was creating and doing, and that's how we were kind of getting through. So I think I just pushed the focus to, I could take advantage of growing my own business per se and doing it on somebody else's dime at the time. fundamentally the detail thing was easy. I mean, there's no overhead to it. It was very simple. And the realization was the next step was either find a location and building where I could do it myself independently and sink or swim, or hold on to something that was a little more structured and kind of go there. And I think ultimately some of the fear was probably there of trying to do it alone and on my own. Again, being young, no real savings account, no real checking account, just kind of living paycheck to paycheck. And the money I was generating off that was really kind of our living expense money, and really kind of letting us do the fun stuff. Everything else was paid for by the regular job at that point in time. And I think that was kind of it. I looked at it solely as a side profession and never really kind of took it to the next level, which probably if I did, I probably could have done something a little different with it. But I've refocused into the business itself and figured if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be the best person I can at this, and I'm gonna knock this down and really kind of take it down with me, and kind of slipped away from it. I found that I could, again, everything kind of comes, I think, some form back to some earnings, and I was able to generate and live in earning and take care of the family per se at that point in time. We didn't really have kids yet, but really kind of do that from working one job instead of trying to fit two, three, four different kind of things in throughout the days.
Gotcha. So it's adapting that mindset into the shop, or into the parts department, or now into leadership. And I'd like to think at some stage, I'm not sure where or when rather, I started to do that for myself, because in reality, my first shop foreman, I talk about him regularly, Rob Mackay, another Robert, he would teach us all of this great stuff. Talk about how to fix cars, how to live life as a mechanic, brotherhood, all of like life in general. He always treated the shop like it was his. Always treated the shop like it was his. And sometimes, so I left, and life happened, and I come back to a Chrysler store, flat rate, licensed, and I started operating like it was my business. And I don't know why or what prompted or what it was, but I really started to operate like it was my business. That stall, technically too, because I had a flat bay beside me, but they were my customers. I treated them like they were my customers. I would follow up with them like they were my customers. I would talk to them like they were my customers. I would treat their vehicles like they're my customers, not the dealerships. And that really, I can really see that across my entire career after that period of time. As a service advisor, I did the same thing. I had my own book of business, as it were. Right? So much so that after I left the desk and into another facility, and I was no longer even remotely dealing with customers, I still had some of those old customers calling me. It's like, hey, I've got this problem, whatever. And being able to see both sides of that, both from the drive and obviously being a licensed technician, I could somewhat coach them through those circumstances to try and help them out. But that, I would say, that's the entrepreneurial spirit, and that, again, that transcends your entire career as you go. So it's cool to hear that you've had that, what you did with that, and how you moved through it and kept that spirit alive. To that point, it sounds like that first year, probably first maybe 1 to 2 years, is what really changed that. Now, your thought process, it sounds like more about structure, a foundation, consistency of paycheck, of things to support the family was the decision more than anything else. That I commend you on. Because it takes a very strong individual to be able to say, okay, my family is more important than the risk of doing something that might be great. I know that I'm going to put all my effort into it, but I might not be great. And the risk of it not being great outweighs my need, desire, want to take care of my family. I commend you for that. That is a very big deal to make that, to be self-aware enough to make that decision. But also not take it as a loss, take it as an opportunity to learn and move that into your career. Focus on the career, focus what you've achieved thus far. The cool thing is, no one on the show thus far has moved through parts like you have. So I want to dig into that a little bit. So when you finally got into parts, and I don't know if finally is the right word or not, it might have been a year, it might have been several, but when you first got into parts, is all the bad shit everybody says about parts true?
So, oh man. So when I first got into parts, so I transferred into parts as a parts driver. So I was doing wholesale delivery, shipping, and receiving when I first got in there. And the first thing that popped in my head, I was like, "What the hell did I do to myself?" I was like, I was living it up. I had it back there. Like there was no structure. I was running around. Detail was detail. You grab a car, you clean it, you get it done, you move on to the next one. It was very, very mindless work. Now here I am driving 8 hours a day in the car by myself with nothing. I was like, what did I do to myself? But, is the novelty of what people portray in parts there? Unfortunately, I have to say it is. And I hate to say that because I tried to break that stigma of that so bad. And again, that's kind of where I became, if anybody ever talked bad about parts, it was never with my name in it. I mean, I was sought after at the parts counter at any of the stores I was at when I worked parts. And so I did, just to break the timeline. Now we're at 25 years now, so it's a little lopsided. But initially, I was about half and half. I did half my career in parts and then half of my career on the service sides. I'm a little lopsided now. I'm a little more on the service side just because I've transitioned to over there. But it really is. It's a great place. You can make a great career out of it. Can you make a difference in what goes on back there? 100%. If you treat it the same way you do on any other position in the facility, you can still be that person. Because there's no doubt, as much as we joke about it on STL as it is there, the advisors, the technicians, you can have the same heartbreak on that side of the world just as much as you can in the parts department. Is it the dumping ground? Because that is truly where everybody ends up, and just Jerry Springer's it 100%. It's lived in. I mean, you're there. Like, that is the melting pot of the shop. I mean, everybody ends up there, and that's probably the biggest loss leader when you look at shops is the amount of time everybody's in there just BSing and making jokes and whatnot. But I don't think it's as bad as it really is.
I would argue, though, the opposite is also true. Because as much time can be wasted in front of the parts counter, whether it doesn't matter what side you're standing on, as much time as can be wasted, as much in terms of bullshit, as much time as can be wasted in smashing your face against a concrete wall because either the parts person or the technician or both are not communicating well, or something didn't work and no one is to blame but the manufacturer. So you're still bashing your face against a wall, no matter how much that is the case. The opposite is true in that if you find a stellar parts person or persons or leader, most importantly, a parts manager, if you can find a stellar parts manager, life can change in the shop with one person in the parts department.
I agree 100% with that.
Completely change the dynamic of the shop, completely change the profitability of the shop, completely change everything, because there is a certain mindset, in my opinion, of that parts person that if they are, and I've used this word before, if they are a ninja, and that is the best way that I can describe it, because it's usually the quiet ones. They usually move quietly. They usually get things done quietly, and you don't know it's happened until it's happened, and it's always successful. And they never take credit for it. Typically. They're typically not the ones that could talk a big game. They're a lot like Lewis Hamilton. They results are on the track. Same thing with these kinds of parts people. The results are in the gross profit at the end of the month. All of a sudden, your obsolescence is depleting at a rapid rate. You have parts that your technicians need, so your fill rate is super high, but accurate with with high turn and low stagnation. Mm-hmm. You've got all of the systems in the department working properly, and everybody is just like, what happened? And it's literally, as best as I can analyze, we've got ninja as a description, but most importantly, they are the most detail-oriented person you will ever meet. When people say cross your T's, dot your I's, it would be cross your T's, dot your I's, dot your J's, make sure the X crosses directly in the middle, make sure there's even a little line in the middle of the Z to make sure everybody's sure that it's not a 2. Right? I agree. That kind of level of detail, that person in parts changes everything. Super attention to detail.
All right, wrench turners. You know I'm all about keeping things running smooth, whether it's an engine or my beard. That's why I use the Bearded Brotherhood. Their beard oils, balms, and mustache waxes are made with all natural ingredients. No junk, just top-tier quality. That keeps my beard looking sharp and feeling great. And their scents are next level, whether it's their best-selling Woodsman or my personal favorite, Barbershop. The Bearded Brotherhood keeps me smelling fresh, and my beard stays soft all day. If you take your beard game seriously, you've got to check them out. And because you're part of the Wrench Turners podcast crew, I got you covered. Use code WRENCH15 at checkout for 15% off every time you order. Hit up thebeardedbrotherhood.co, grab your gear, and join the Brotherhood. Trust me, your beard will thank you. Now back to today's episode.
Now, usually, and unfortunately, that same person has also got the same personality of a wet board, right? It's just full deadpan. You can't tell if they're happy, they're sad, nothing. So they're really hard to manage from a personnel standpoint because you don't know what motivates them necessarily. So from that standpoint, just my little tidbits. I don't get to talk parts that often, and I'm quasi afraid to talk about parts on Service Drive because I'm going to get tarred and feathered by Joe.
I try to stay away from it, but I think it's weird because I can't even tell you. Once I got to the service side and I started interviewing technicians, like two questions came up, and I'd laugh and tell me if you do this, Josh, because I'd love to know. But two questions that come up from almost every technician, and I'm a quality technician, not new guys that have never worked in a shop before, but like old timers. The two questions that come up is, what's your parts department like, and how's your special tool room?
Mm-hmm.
That's the two questions I've got almost every single time from every quality technician I've ever interviewed were those two questions. And I'm like, I can show
super
them
important.
I can show them the tool room. The parts department, unfortunately, I got to give them, it's better than most. And my guys do a great job. I give them credit. They do a great job. The thing I miss about what I think I brought to the table differently from other people, and there's guys out there that still do it, is like you said, the ninjas, the ones that live outside the box. They stay outside the box and they're looking for the best way and the smoothest way and the quickest way to help take care of that technician and get him back out the stall. Whether that's finding the part, locating the part, or at least doing everything they could so that way that technician knew everything was left on the table, nothing was missed. He tried. It's just on back order. And hey, some cases that's it. But I found it funny that was always the two questions that I got all the time on that side. But yeah, man.
I think it's a great identifier in a lot of different ways, and it's difficult for folks such as yourself to identify the things that you need to say about your part department because on one hand, if you're honest, you might steer them away. If you're dishonest and they get in and they find out, they're going to leave quick. So it's difficult to answer the question about parts. And to your point, again, to both of our point, a good parts department can change a business. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot that you can communicate to any prospective technician to give them a sense of, I know exactly what the parts department is like.
Yeah.
And paint the positive picture. Because you can lie, you can be deceitful and paint a great picture, but the truth usually stings a little bit about parts. And to that point, most technicians in my experience, and it wasn't until I left the bench that I started learning these things about parts, that most technicians won't even understand the basics from the other side of that parts counter. So even if you were to tell them things that are objective about a part department winning, they aren't necessarily going to understand. So it's a challenge. So to that point, and maybe we can riff this a little bit based on and it doesn't matter which one of the stores because you bop around a little bit. In your mind, as a parts person, as a parts manager, as a director who now oversees parts and service departments, what is perhaps one metric you could use to tell technicians out there to ask in that same circumstance? Hey, what's your parts department like? Instead of asking what's your parts department like, which is a lot like how was your day to your 11-year-old who's just going to say fine. What is a metric that they can ask? Hey, what is your parts department metric? And if depending on the answer, they can gauge whether the parts department is good or not.
Man, that's a question I've probably not actually asked even myself, I think, to look at. My gosh, say probably one of the best matrix I could say from a part side for a technician to kind of want to understand is, now I wouldn't even say it's a metrics, but just the attention to detail that they bring. The littlest thing, like do you have your parts department bring the tools to the parts to the technician? As silly as it is, I think it's a peace of mind situation. Now we use technology through our shops and all that goes electronically. To say that the guy in the parts department would pull the parts and leave them on the counter, not just walk them the extra 10 feet out to the technician, to me is a bit disrespectful. So, we request and we ask our guys to bring them out to them, which I think most in every shop should. And I know it seems trivial and it's not really kind of like a KPI really to look at, but I think it's a good question to ask and understand if that's the development they have between the two departments, because I think that shows some unified concepts between the two departments, that they're willing to actually get up, walk the parts out to the technician and bring them out there, not just build the parts out and leave them sit and we're one department, you're one department kind of thing. I think that's a huge identifier that they're working as one team.
I didn't think of it that way, but I think that is an absolutely amazing question because that identifies team.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily saying whether the parts department is good or bad or otherwise, but it does show the part department is playing as part of the team, not as an individual entity and siloed away. We're here to help you. You're here to help us. Without you, Mr. or Mrs. Technician, we can't sell parts. But without us, you can't fix the car if it needs a part, right? That's that symbiotic relationship. Folks, you heard that should go on all of your reverse interview questions. Remember, it's been like 2 years since I did one. And I think I did I did one that I didn't air, and I did one with Zach Perkle. And I did a whole bunch of reverse interview questions, meaning all kinds of questions that as a technician you should ask the service leader or the fixed ops director or the service manager. Those are the questions you should be asking in an interview the other way around to try and gauge what kind of team, what kind of leader, what kind of so on. That is another great question to ask. Awesome. From that point, and I understand that you're big into fitness, B, you're big into coaching, and C, you've been really vocal publicly on the Fixed Ops Roundtable with Ted Ings. Out of all of that, what is it that made you want to be more public with your voice, considering your experience in service?
So for me, it was kind of my version of a give back to what the automotive industry has done for myself and my family. So I pride ourselves, me and my wife, because it's not just me, but we made a decision early on when we started having children. Again, not being the most financially stable couple and being very young, we were living and struggling with finances the way they were, and we made the determination that we were going to go to a single family income, and she was going to stay home with the kids and raise the kids, and we've been able to do that. My oldest just turned 18 this year, so my wife has been home and functionally home for the 4 kids the entire time. I think less, maybe the first year and a half. So we'll call it 16 years roughly. We'll say she's been home with kids directly involved, and I think it's probably a little more than that at the end of the day. But so it's always been very good to us, the automotive industry in a whole. People can be challenging, people can be different, but in the overall context of the automotive industry, from any position, and I mean any in the dealership, from the office to the parts department, to service department, to sales department, it can become a life-changing organization in any way, depending on what you put into it and what you try to get out of it. And that was the big thing for me. It took care of our family very well. Lots of labor went into that, and I don't discredit any of that. I think there's a lot of long nights and weekends and 7 days a week kind of situations that went on, but ultimately it fulfilled what we needed to be able to take care of our family. And I thought it was just a presence to be aware, to kind of give a lot of that back to people trying to get into the industry. So I first started kind of getting involved with the local schools, and one of my big ones that really kind of changed it for me, I was sitting in on we had a local automotive dealer board in Pennsylvania, and sitting in on that and watching the dealer group. Now they created one specifically for the service side of things, for the fixed operational side, not for the sales side. And being a part of that and kind of seeing all these dealers, all these guys that were service managers from all these other brands, and all these other female service managers and parts managers and dealer principals showing up and trying to figure out how to get back to the community, how to retain and hire technicians in our industry from a breed that we were watching die, 10, 15 years ago, as we still kind of continue to go through that. And it really just kind of hit me like, this is what I want to do. I want to get to the point where I can actually start giving back in that regard to it. And platforms like that, I mean, SDL is a prime example. Just being here with you today, Josh, it's just another means to help try to give back in that merit, for you, for me, to share kind of what it does for it. Hopefully, a young up and coming parts person, technician, service person kind of hears it and it's like, hey, look, I can kind of be where they are and do the same thing, is really kind of what I'm hoping to see at the end of this all, is everybody getting out there and sharing a little bit more. Just allows us to kind of really show what this industry's done for all of us, realistically.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I appreciate the transparency of that, because there's a couple of things in there. One, single income family supporting children is, I don't know what that is. That's unfortunately not us. And I say unfortunately because, my wife and I realized probably about a year or two ago that we probably should have figured out a way a long time ago to reverse roles in some capacity so that we could have made that happen. Not a regret, just a thing that we are now trying to figure out, how do we make that happen in some capacity? Is there a way for that for us to happen in some capacity? Because the ability to make sure your family's taken care of from both sides of that coin, I think is a gigantic, privilege is not the right word, but a gigantic luxury that we wish that every family could afford to do, because the opportunities that it presents for your children, for yourself, for your community, for everything, I think is awesome. Two, the fact that after all of this time, that as soon as you were able, you started to give back through communities, through the schooling, through opportunities to share your life experience, your career experience, and so forth, so that others can, as we generally say, don't make our mistakes, I think is usually the thing that we both try to
plenty. I've made plenty.
Right? So I'm really thankful that you do that. I appreciate that very much. So to that point, in your nearly 25, knocking on the door of 25 years in this industry, what would you say is your piece of advice to help a technician be happier, healthier, more productive tomorrow?
Well, I think we touched on it, and you made it very open that you do it as well, Josh, and I think I did it as well. Go in there and own that stall. Treat it like a franchise. You're working a franchise at that point in time. You bear the name of the business on your uniform, but at the end of the day, you're the owner of that business, and treat it as such. So have a standard for yourself. Enjoy what you do. Want to be there. I know, again, I said it a little earlier, people can make a lot of the troubling parts of the situation tough if the wrong management's there, or the wrong staffing's there, and there's poor stuff in it. But really kind of dive in and just make it yours, I think is the biggest thing. You can work through everything else. Be open to talk. I think that's huge. I think, you've held plenty of conversations in regards to, technicians and speaking up and having a voice and whatnot. So I think that's huge. Just have a voice. Don't be stagnant in what you're doing. Don't come in and rock the boat to the bad side. Try to change the industry and be better than what we've kind of had handed to us at the end of the day. I don't want to say that in a bad sense, and I'm not saying anybody kind of tainted it or made it awful, but I think we created ourselves some of the stigmas of what the technicians kind of live through in the shop. And I think we can break those barriers and turn them into so much more. And then when you watch the development of the technician, the advisor, the management, the parts department, all kind of start working as one, it's very unique to see in a lot of shops, and then just creates such a great energy inside what's going on. It just makes everybody kind of a little happier. So I think that's the biggest thing. Just own that stall, make it yours. Don't just be there to be there. Make sure you're there as if it's your business every day, and you're trying to just own it the best you can every day. I don't know any other way to say it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that example, I lived that. And I think you owned your stall, as it were, as you move through. You're now really owning that stall as a leader of service and of service personnel in more than one shop. That owning, as it were, is a result of self-awareness, accountability, responsibility, understanding that you don't do the job. Your job is being in charge of people who do the job. Mm-hmm. And understanding that well takes a lot of time, energy, and commitment. Because it's very difficult as someone who used to do the job to go, I can just do it better. Well, yes, maybe you can, but your job is to teach them how to do it as well as you did it or better. Your job isn't to do the job. Your job is to teach them how to do the job so they can do it for themselves, and most importantly, so that they can do it for themselves. Like you've shared, you spent the last 25 years being able to support your family, grow your family, and support your family. You want to teach them to do the same thing, which is why you spend so much time, energy, and effort supporting your team, supporting your community, and so on and so forth. So I appreciate that. To that point, so one little tidbit here that I didn't share before as a surprise of sorts. I've been asking guests a question. Actually, first guest, ask a question. Then the next guest, answer the question and ask the guest for the next question. So it's been a bit of a domino as we go. And it's just been a steady change. So the last episode that I recorded was with a pair of individuals. And so I got two questions. So you got to answer two questions. You only have to ask a question for the next guest. You only have to ask one, but you have to answer two now. Okay?
That's fine. I think we can do it.
So Alec Raffini asks, let me read it here because I remember who it was, but I can't remember who it was. Here he is. Alex Raffini asks, do you eat meals with your crew? And his shop foreman, Clemente, asks, what is your one activity to overcome your fears?
So to Alex's question there, I do break bread with my team, more so than the joking pizza party that is portrayed in the automotive industry. No, we do. We do go out. Actually, geez, now that came up, it's realization that it's actually time to go back out again. Mm-hmm. I think the last venture we went out, we actually went axe throwing. They had a bar and food at the place and facility and a full arcades. We took care of the whole thing, brought everybody out, and just spent the night there kind of hanging out. So it's definitely something that needs to be done. I think it helps break the walls down, that it's not just all about the shop and the store and the business, that we're actually people at the end of the day. So that is a good one. What was the other one? What activities?
What
do you
is
do?
one activity what is one activity to overcome your fears? So what do you do to overcome your fears?
Very few things I'm actually fearful of, to be honest. I think the biggest part is kind of the unknowns for me. So really, right now, I refound myself a little bit here. So I think when I go out, and for me personally, when I go out and play basketball in the morning and just kind of clear my head on the court, I think that's kind of what gets me going. Just wakes me up, gets me going, and allows me to get through anything I'm kind of thinking of or thinking bad about. Just kind of spaces out, and definitely kind of just balances me again and brings me back. Bring me back to a solid position to start off where I'm at. So
Awesome. Interesting.
there,
Interesting.
yeah,
So you're using basketball as your breathing techniques, your yoga, your meditation, as it were, your zen, finding your way.
it's
So
definitely my zen place. When I'm feeling bad, I could tell I hadn't played basketball in a while. I could tell by how frustrated and aggravated I'm starting to get by little things, and as soon as I go play, it's like I'm just open up again. I'm like, all right, you know what? It's not that bad.
awesome. I can't say that I've ever been so zoned in on any sport that I've played that's happened to me, but I can understand where that's a thing. I do know that I have that same that's right now. It's motorcycles, man. Get on the bike.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about the bike is it's fast enough and it's stupid enough that if you're not paying attention to what you're doing in the moment, it's kaputs, which basically means it's a forceful action of I have to empty my head, because you can't, like, I can't. And I'm not even on like a stupid leader bike or anything like that. Like I'm in a middleweight naked bike and it's still ridiculously fast. So
I was the same way when I had mine. I just I don't have a long enough ride for my motorcycle to make it worthwhile anymore. It's 4 miles to work, and it's like 2 roads, and 10 to 12 minutes on it wouldn't been enough. I'd almost have to take a longer ride home just to get the enjoyment out of the bike.
Well, my commute is about 15 feet from my bed, so that's I have to
Even
find
worse.
excuses to go
Yeah.
out and ride.
You literally have
So-
to.
And unfortunately, the grocery store is, about a half mile up the road, and it's literally, I can walk out. It's not even a half mile, to be honest, I bet, because I can literally walk to out my driveway, and at the end of my driveway is a main road, and I look down the main road and I can see the grocery store sign at the other end of the road. So even grocery store runs end up, how do I turn this into a 30-minute thing? How do I turn this 4-minute thing into a 30-minute thing? So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That said, I need a question for the next guest, and I have no idea who it is.
It'd be nice to know who it was, because that'd be a lot of fun just to set it up. But let's see. So I'm going to say the majority of the people on here are going to be a little bit older in their age. I'm going to go with one of the classic ones. If you can go back to your 17 or 18-year-old self and let him know kind of where you are now, what things would you want?
What would you say?
Yeah, what would you tell your 17-year-old self to change some of the outcomes of where you are now?
Awesome.
I think that's
Awesome. I think that's an awesome question.
'Cause it's a fun question to get answered. It's fun to see what people have kind of found out about themselves over the last course of the years, and want to tell them their younger self what to expect or what to change.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think about the list and litany of things that I would probably do differently.
Or nothing
Just
at
a
all,
litany.
right?
No,
Well,
I wouldn't
maybe
change.
we are.
I-
It'd be wild how far different things would be.
Yeah, man. My wife and I regularly speculate on what would have happened if we hadn't got married. What would have happened if we got married 5 years earlier? What would have happened if you didn't go to doctor school? Like, we have those conversations like, well, okay, well, I was doing this at that time. Would I have stopped and made So yeah, that's good. That's awesome.
Like we have that's with us. We have 4 kids, and like I constantly am like, man, 4 kids is so much work. There's so much that's going on. I was like, but like, I couldn't picture life any different. Like I couldn't change it. Like I wouldn't want to go back and change any of it, no matter how hard the struggles were on it. But good stuff, man. It's good.
Awesome. So, folks, I think that's the end of another episode this week. And this past week, actually past couple of months, has been a challenge, and it hit me pretty hard this weekend. So I didn't find y'all a quote, because I lost my grandfather 3 years ago to cancer. A month ago, my dog was diagnosed with cancer and was given a short time to live. Thankfully, she's still around right now, but that hit me pretty hard. She's my first real dog. And then my dad tells me he was going in for surgery, which happened Friday, and it was a heart valve replacement. So unfortunately, he's had to have his whole chest open, and he is unfortunately still in the ICU under very high alert care. So with that said, and a lot bearing on my head and my heart today, I'd like to share a little bit of one of our family traditions. Our family tradition, we don't have that many, but one of the things that my grandfather and my father, and now me trying to learn it off the top of my head, because I still haven't figured it. It's just one of those things, maybe it hits me, I don't know, but it's grace. You don't have to believe, you don't have to do any of those things to listen, but if you would be so kind as to listen, and I have to write it because if I don't right now, I pretty much tear up. But this is the Taylor family grace. Our Heavenly Father, which thou hast provided for us, help us eat and drink to thy honor and glory. Pardon our many sins, for Christ's sake. Amen. Folks, negative pushes, positive pulls, and always clean your toys before you put them away.